the first files we'll be looking at are the test GUI1 and the basic frame 1. We're using two classes mainly because we want to distinguish that the main method and the actual frame are two different pieces of code. That's the reason why I put it into separate classes. It's not necessary, but I find that it's helpful for that distinction. So in our test GUI1, we have our public static void main method, and we're creating a basic frame 1 object. Objects and classes, we will learn more about that in grade 12. Just know that we're just creating a frame 1, a basic frame 1. In the basic frame 1, we are extending JFrame. So extends JFrame just means that it is an example of a JFrame. So basic frame 1 is a JFrame of some sorts, but with some sort of extensions. That's why it says extends. We do have a constructor, which is to build the frame, and it's to initialize values that I need. So here's the very basic code. Public basic frame 1 has the same name as the class. And so some basic code that I would probably add are set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. Basically, if we close the window, then the program will end. Set title sets the title of the window. Size is the x and y value, the number of pixels, and sets visible is whether you can see it or not. So I'm going to run this code. I'm going to compile basic frame. I'm going to compile basic frame. I'm going to compile test GUI1. I'm going to run this code. And I get this cute little dinky 200 by 200 window. You can see that the title is not visible because it's so dinky, but I can resize it such that it says my GUI. I could edit it and change the title to be something else. I can change the size, but that's basically it. So for the test GUI2, we're going to be talking about how we add components, add things into our window. So test GUI2, it looks basically exactly the same. I've just deleted the other code. All we need basically is creating a frame. We're creating a basic frame 2, and inside basic frame 2, we have our different components. So everything here so far, I'm going to comment this out, is basically the same. I've added a few things. So public class basic frame 2 extends JFrame. We'll ignore all these for now. And we also have our constructor. We initialize, we set the title, we set the size, set visible, etc. So components. There are various different kinds of components, things you can put onto your screen. So an example would be buttons, could be labels, could be menus, or even text boxes. So I'm not going to teach you all of them. There's this website. It's going to be on the PowerPoint that's in the class link, class website. And it will show you a lot of different components that are available for you, whether it's buttons, checkboxes. It'll talk about different things you can use. So color chooser, JFile chooser. And all of these, there are probably YouTube tutorials out there. And then there's top level containers. So JFrame is what we're using, but there are other things as well. And then containers, which we'll also take a look at in a little bit. And I'm not even going to touch this, but they exist, so you can use them as you like. So the things that I'm going to have right now are the J button, J label, and text field. The J buttons are buttons. A J label is kind of a way to display text, and a text field is where people can enter text in order to be used somewhere. And I usually like to organize it in this way, having a section clearly labeled for the components and containers, and then a section for any variables I might use for our program, and then, as per usual, our constructor. Now, inside my constructor, I want to be able to create these buttons and make them visible on the screen. So what I do is I have my different buttons created called click button and click to button. Click button to naming could be better. So click button equals new J button, click me. You can see different tutorials about how to create buttons and stuff like that. I'm not going to go over that too much. And then I'm going to create a click to button, new J button, click me also. I'm going to say click to button dot set size. So I could set the size of my button if I wanted to. Specifically, I'm setting the size of my button. Now, to add the buttons on the frame to make it so that they are up inside the room. So, for example, like you could have a shoe in this universe, but unless it's in your room, if you look at the room, the shoe is not going to be in there. So if you put the shoe in your room, then if you look at your room, you'll see the shoe. And we do this by adding the click button and the click to button into this, which is a frame. So this is referring to itself, which is basic frame 2, which is a frame. So if I compile this, test GUI, compile, and run this one, I can see that I have a button. Wait a minute, it's not working. Well, first of all, there's nothing, I didn't tell the computer to do anything when I'm clicking the button. But also, you notice that the text says click me also. That is my clicked to button. I'm pretty sure I added the button to the frame, but it's not showing. Well, that's because I don't have a layout. I didn't tell the computer about how to organize the things in my container. And that has to do with layouts. So layouts are how your things are being organized. By default, your container can hold one thing at a time. And very useful. So right now I added the first button, and then I added the second button because the second button, because the frame only has one thing at a time, it will overwrite the first button. I only have my first button. However, if I set the layout to a specific layout, so this is called the flow layout. It is one of many layouts that are available for you. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but that's the idea. So if I compile it, I run this test GUI2, and so now I see that my button is 40 by 40, which is, not big enough. But also you can see that now I have my two buttons. And the idea of layouts is that it's flexible. If I created my button and said, oh, it must be at 00 or must be at 50/50 or something, it will exist. But the buttons and the things won't adapt to the size of your window. And because when we're creating windows and stuff, we are adapting to people with different types of resolutions, different screen sizes. And so that's why having a layout is important. So now I can see my buttons, but they don't do anything.